Oh, Tyron, why couldn't you just throw more? For like the first half of the fight, he turned into the frozen one again. This is what I was worried about for Tyron Woodley, man. The inactivity in a fight, the hesitancy that he always has, that he even had in his MMA career, but the difference here was he was the one moving forward and not throwing any punches, which is even more questionable. I mean, he threw only 6 punches in that first round, and 2 of them were feints. But we do have to give respect to both these guys, especially Jake Paul, for the amount of damage that he took, the big right hands from the biggest puncher in the welterweight division's history from the UFC, shots that has KO'd so many fighters in the past. Now, again, they are bigger gloves. They're not 4-ounce gloves that they use in MMA, so it does take a bit of that impact away that Tyron Woodley is used to delivering with. But still, man, Jake Paul has a chin. He has a really good chin because Tyron Woodley has tremendous power in his hands, and the way he throws that big right overhand that almost dropped Jake Paul, the ropes actually held him up a bit, so it does not count as a knockdown. Jake Paul was still able to come back from that and throw his own shots, fight back against adversity, and we saw it in real time. Jake Paul also was able to throw and time his shots with great precision under heavy pressure, and that's a thing that we have to mention about Tyron Woodley. So I talked my prediction that the way that Tyron Woodley is going to have to win this fight is by pressuring Jake Paul. Usually boxers who don't have a lot of experience, they crumble under the pressure or they get very uncomfortable. The pressure was working. It was still getting Jake Paul to cross his feet sometimes, which leaves you unbalanced and open to get hit by a big shot. It really doesn't even matter at that point. Even if you block it, you're going to get left unbalanced because of it. It makes it harder for you to escape any kind of offense because it's very obvious on which direction you're going to take when you cross your feet. Easier to track you, easier to hit you, and harder for you to get away. He was also still winging out those looping punches, especially that left hook of his, whereas when he was moving forward, his punches are a lot more tight. Even that big right overhand that Tyron Woodley landed on him that nearly knocked him down, that all came from Jake Paul being uncomfortable under the pressure. What did Jake Paul do? Notice what Jake did here. When he saw Tyron Woodley advance at him, Jake swung out a looping left hook, put his eyes to the ground off of Tyron Woodley. That's why he didn't connect on it that hard, and Woodley was able to see the punch coming. Now Jake is not able to see Tyron Woodley's right hand because, again, his eyes are completely off of him. That comes from inexperience, and Tyron landed the right hand on the temple. If he kept doing stuff like this, he would have caught Jake Paul off guard many different times. But the issue with Tyron Woodley was he still was so hesitant even while moving forward. He was cutting off the cage effectively for the most part, but it was actually Jake Paul that had the higher output, even moving on the back foot. He was landing big right overhands that caught Woodley very clean. Woodley showed to have a good chin in this fight, even with his age included. He was landing left hooks, he was landing a lot of jabs, and Tyron Woodley thought he won the fight because of the pressure for the most part. I don't agree with that. I agree with Jake Paul winning this fight. I actually gave him 6 rounds out of the 8. I gave Tyron Woodley the 4th and the last round, and it was a bit frustrating to see that Tyron Woodley did not press on the gas. He definitely had a lot more in the tank by the end of that round. He had so much more to just expend, but he just decided not to, even though he was down in the rounds. Now, he thought he was winning the fight, so that was probably a reason why he didn't go for the knockout in that last round like that. But still, if you have so much more in the gas tank by the end of the fight and it was close, you could only blame yourself for losing. If you didn't give 100% of everything you had in the fight, which Tyron Woodley did not, he can only blame himself. Tyron Woodley had the opportunity to throw more shots, set up his right hands with more jabs, which would have been beautiful for him. His jabs are actually very nice. Jake Paul actually had the better setups. Jake Paul actually had the better precision with his punches. He was catching Tyron Woodley with many more power shots. For an example, he had a very good lead right into a lunging jab. That lead right gets the opponent, in this case Tyron Woodley, to lean away from it. That ultimately extends their head movement, and they ultimately fall into the end of that long jab. This is similar to what a lot of fighters have been doing as of late, and it's just interesting to see, and actually very exciting to see, that Jake Paul's adding these kind of strikes and techniques into his boxing game. Or what about the different kind of combinations he was landing on Tyron Woodley? For an example, he would come up with a lead high feint to get Tyron Woodley to raise his guard, which exposes the body, especially to that right side. So Jake Paul attacks it with the right hand, and off of that, notice his footwork as well. He's slowly rotating to the left with every single movement, ultimately offsetting Tyron Woodley's stance and giving him a natural opening for the left hook. The more he rotates to his left, the more open the head is for that left hook, and that's what he ultimately goes for. When he lands the right hand to the body, this lowers the guard a bit, and now he has that left hook over the top. He is getting far better as a boxer every single time we see him. Tonight against Tyron Woodley, he was better than when he was against Ben Askren. His footwork was better, his shot placement was better for the most part besides the right hand that knocked out Ben. His punches are a lot more tight, and he was mixing up body and head shots inside combinations. Against Ben Askren, he was throwing single shots to the body, that big right hand to the body. Fighters cannot underestimate Jake Paul, man. He's not as bad as people think he is. They get the wrong idea because of his personality, but when he's in the ring, he does stuff like this. But I honestly believe if Woodley would have thrown more shots in the fight, if he started the fight with actually being somewhat active, only throwing 6 punches in the first round is not great. I think he would have a lot more success, and in fact, he had a bigger chance of winning the fight. What's good pressuring if you're not going to throw punches? And it seems like now they're going to run this back. We saw a deal in real time, a fight get made in front of our eyes after the fight was over, that Tyron Woodley now has to get a tattoo that says "I love Jake Paul" on his leg in order for him to get the rematch, and Tyron Woodley accepted, and he accepted gladly. Like, he had no hesitation in getting that tattoo. I don't know about that, man. That's almost like getting branded by your opponent, and I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that for money, because it just seems like you're selling yourself out for another payday. I don't know how I feel about that. I wouldn't do it, but I'm happy for Tyron Woodley if that's actually what he wants, especially after the guy went after your mom too. I don't know how I feel about all that. But the rematch should be pretty good. Tyron Woodley needs to throw more punches. This was his first boxing fight. He definitely can win the rematch. He just needs to be far more active. Double the output, because the output is what hurt him on the scorecards.